Hi, I'm Bhavi and I'm the Creative Director for the ITSme Learning Academy. This video is all about the colour theory and how artists incorporate it into their illustration and design work. I'm happy to share that we've asked some illustrators to take part in this video and share how they incorporate the colour theory concept into their artwork. So I hope you enjoy this video and I hope you find it super informative, and keep watching to learn a little bit more about this.
Hello, my name is Sebastian Timpe. I go by he, him pronouns, and I'm here to talk to you about color today. Color theory is one of those great strategies you can learn as an artist. I found the most helpful way to learn colors to get your hands on some paint and just get dirty and start mixing. As I work mainly in digital illustration, I have practically every color available to me. And the challenge really becomes just narrowing it down. Often I start with two main colors, a highlight and a shadow. Typically, yellow and blue is kind of the easiest way to go for that, because yellow is just a great color for highlights because it's lighter to our eyes in appearance than most other colors, even though in actual value it may be the same on the canvas. And stuff like navy blues, forest greens, deep purples make really excellent shadow colors because they have the exact opposite effect. In this illustration of a bard, I have a red coat, but the highlights are a muted orange and the shadows are a dark pink. This way you can create depth, not just with value, but with color. For color palettes, one of the best tricks I ever learned was to take an image, a photograph, another illustration, a painting, plop it into your software of choice, pixelate it down, and now you've got really strong blocks of core colors that work really well together. For me, this is just a starting point though, because sometimes doing that, you'll lose like a red or a blue or a yellow. Or there's a color you need that doesn't already exist in the painting or drawing that you're pulling from. This is where I kind of take it back to the basics and start digitally mixing colors, similar to the process of glazing in oil painting. I might take like a very bright red, drop it into like say a nighttime scene that's really blue, and start mixing in blues and other colors from the color palette kind of in layers of transparency or blending modes till I get the red that harmonizes with the rest of the paint. Consider a film set. Often when filming in low light conditions, it just doesn't produce the best or most readable results because the light is so dim. So they're going to use a lighting setup, a set, and filters to convey that nighttime feeling. You are the director of your illustration. You get to cast and clothe the characters, but you also get to scout and light your own set. Start with like observing how sunlight and moonlight interact with objects in real life. You know, a shiny metal in sunlight is going to have this really sharp white highlight. On a cloudy day, shadows are going to be like really diffuse and flat, and not very directional. If you're looking out over a series of hills, things are going to get lighter and bluer the farther you go. We call that atmospheric perspective. You can throw all these little hints into your illustration and the audience will kind of unconsciously pick up on it because that's how the real world works and that's what we see every day. Now you can take all this observation back to your work and consider how color would change if you set your painting in a different light. Like if your painting was a movie set and you change the filters or you change the direction. The glazing method, like in oil painting, can also help if you're trying to change the time of day in your illustration. To make it night, just grab a blue, drop it in on its own layer above everything, and then play around with the transparency and blending modes so you find something that looks close. Of course, this is going to bring all your colors closer to blue, and you will lose some of that variance. From there, you can mask out the highlights or change them to a different color using the same method to work on getting some of that color variation back. But remember, one of the easiest ways to convey night is that limited color range. As we can see in this nighttime illustration, everything in shadow is a shade of blue. Even though some of the elements may appear to be brown or red, and this is done by contrasting a very gray blue against a very saturated blue to trick the eye into seeing more color variation than there really is in the painting. For me, none of this was all learned through one class. It was gathered by listening to different people talk about their own process and then experimenting and finding what worked for me. This is just my method. Take what you can from it, learn from others, but most importantly, go out there and get your hands dirty.
I think color theory factors in quite heavily into how I approach my color in my work. I think one of the main things I try to think about when I'm setting out to build like a color study for something is the mood of a piece and the emotion of a piece and how to make those things read quite clearly with just color and lighting. And I think color theory plays a lot into how to figure that out. Granted, color theory is very complicated. There's a lot of facets, a lot of moving pieces with like understanding color and light, but one of the big things that I try to think about, which is a big component of color theory, is how to make something emote without the words behind it. I think when you're thinking about or building a color composition, you do want to think about how that lighting maybe reads as the drama of the piece versus the quiet moments, like which colors really emphasize those things or which lighting composition really emphasizes those things. And I think color theory plays into understanding that balance or having that balance read the most clearly to a viewer than anything else. So I do try to think about it quite frequently when I'm working on a piece. To come up with color palettes for my work, I tend to do thumbnails. I do at least 2 or 3 little thumbnails. They're quick, they're easy, they're small, and they read really well. So it's very easy to look at it and be like, oh, yeah, that is doing exactly what I need it to do. So I try to do at least 2 or 3 color studies just to have a clear idea of like this, everything laid out looks good and also reads clearly as to what I'm trying to do. Nothing's getting lost. I also try to think about things like contrast in colors when I'm building those color studies, like what things are popping versus receding into the background. And does this color study convey the emotion that I'm trying to convey in this piece? Does it look cheerful? Does it look sad? All those things factor into like how I approach coming up with my colors. My advice to any illustrators trying to change up the temperature of the time of day in a piece is to play into the colors that you wouldn't actually think of at first when you think of things like a daytime sky or a dusk. You know, I know if you think of the daytime, you'd think of like really bright blue, sky blue atmosphere, or at nighttime, maybe you'd think of like a dark blue or even a black. But I think playing up things like maybe it's purple with like pinks or really fiery orange, it gives a more interesting visual. I think nature in itself, like color and lighting in nature is super dramatic, and playing into the dramatics of the actual colors that happen in nature is way more appealing in a piece than just necessarily keeping it the standard dark blue nighttime sky. I think as artists, it's fun to like dramatize the truth a little bit. So I would play into that, have fun with it. And also it might build for like a more robust color palette at the end of the day. have a very specific technique with how to make night or daytime scenes. I think my greatest advice is always to use reference and to play it up or tone it down as needed. I think art is an interpretation of the real world. So if I look to the sky and I see one pink cloud, maybe I extend that pink cloud to the entirety of the sky, and I know that the sky isn't pink, but if I made it pink and it emotes what I need it to and it works for my color palette, then I'm going to experiment and see how I feel about it at the end of the day. I think the most important thing is look to the real world, play with it as needed, and find the thing that works best for you when you're building out your color palette.
Thank you for watching this video, and I hope you found it super informative. Make sure to subscribe to the ITSme newsletter and YouTube channel for more helpful resources. And if you're interested in our mentorship program or any of our upcoming short courses, then be sure to reach out to the ITSme group at learning@itsmegroup.com.